All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and get us started. First of all, I just wanted to thank you all for joining us here today. We have more than 200 students from 12 schools across the state with us today, and a number of others who are planning to watch the recording. We're so excited to share some resources and experiences with you that might help you as you start to think about your own future careers. My name is Anna, and I'm the Special Events Coordinator with VSAC's GEAR UP program. GEAR UP is a federally funded program that serves 35 schools throughout Vermont and over 500,000 across the United States. I know we have a number of GEAR UP schools with us today, as well as a number of VSAC Talent Search schools, and just wanted to share a little bit more about these programs. Through these programs, a VSAC outreach counselor can help you with future planning, career exploration, employability skills, college and job training program applications, and much more. If you're interested in participating, you can talk to your school counselor for more information and to find out if you're eligible to apply. I have just a few housekeeping items to share, and then we'll get started. Adriana, if you want to click over to that housekeeping slide, that's got a few more details for those of you that are visual learners. First, unless you're a presenter, you should all be muted, but you can ask your teacher to type any questions you have throughout the presentation in the chat. We'll do our best to answer the ones we can, and we'll also compile them all and get answers for you afterwards for any that we don't get to today. If you need any technical support, you can type it in the chat, or you can directly message me or my colleague Adriana. And as I said before, we recommend setting your Zoom to full speaker view to make it easier to see our panelists. We are recording our workshop today, but only the people who are speaking will show up in the recording, so feel free to leave your videos on. It's much more fun for our panelists to talk to your faces than blank screens. And we will share this recording with you and post it on our webpage following today's event if you want to rewatch it or share it with any of your colleagues or classmates. And so with that, I am going to hand it off to our moderator, Kathi Terami from Careers CLiC, to get us started. Thanks again for being here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kathi. I'll introduce myself quickly and then we'll get moving on so you can meet other people. I work for an organization called Careers CLiC. We do career development for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. And middle school is a great time to be thinking about what you're interested in and exploring those interests and learning about what people do that might be connected to your interests. So today you are going to meet different people who are going to tell you a little bit about their career paths. And I'll tell you quickly, when I was in middle school, I wanted to be a chef in a restaurant. That was something I did for career day. It's something I did for job shadowing. And that was what I was interested in middle school. In high school, I wanted to be an interior decorator. And then in college, I went and got a business degree. And now I work for a nonprofit organization in education, which is something I never thought I would end up doing someday, but I love it. Before we meet our panel of 4 really interesting people, I want to introduce you to Matt Barewicz from the Vermont Department of Labor. He'll tell you a little bit about himself, and he will share information about this resource. I'm looking at the classroom screens. Do any of you have this brochure that I'm holding up? If you do, kind of like wave it in front. Oh yeah, there, I see it. Yay. So Matt is going to walk you through this before we meet our panelists. Matt.
Thank you, Kathi. It's so exciting to be here today. I hope everyone is excited to do some good listening and just learn, be open and curious. I'm going to share a screen so that you can see what I'm going to talk about. It'll help us go through the brochure. My screen should be coming up now. And I can see I have a split screen, so I'm looking at some classrooms right now. Good morning, everyone. Let's see. So as Kathi said, I'm with the Vermont Department of Labor. I am an economist, and we'll talk a little bit about what that is. But I am here to just kind of prep the day and get people ready to use this brochure and start thinking about good questions to ask. So we do have a website, and I encourage everyone to take a look at it. At the bottom, it says vtlmi.info. On our website, we have this career exploration page where it allows you to look at videos and just kind of do some searches on your own to ask those questions again of what might I be interested in. You can even take personality tests, and hopefully by talking about this brochure today, we'll give you some ideas. So this brochure, Vermont's Most Promising Jobs, we put it out every 2 years, and there's a lot of good occupations in here. Vermont needs workers, and we have lots of ways that you can learn about these jobs, and so you can have a life that you want to live. So thank you in advance for being here, asking questions, being curious about education and jobs, because as I said, Vermont needs you. So let's talk economics quickly. What is an economist? My job is actually to produce, explain, and share, that's what disseminate means, share economic data. So there's a lot of questions out there we don't know the answers for, and sometimes you call an economist to help you better understand what those are. In short, my job is not to tell people what to do. My job is to give them information to help them make the best decisions for themselves. So all of you have decisions to make about what classes to take, about what jobs you might be interested in. And my job is to help give you information, like Kathi, give you information to help you make the best decision for yourself. We want you to be happy. We want you to be successful. And you get to decide what happy and successful looks like for you, not only in education, but in your career and ultimately your life around. Now, how did it begin for me? Kathi shared her story. I want to share mine. Uh-oh, there I am. No, that's not me. This is me. This is me working in a grocery store when I was in high school. You can get jobs that you learn so much about, and I'll talk about what I learned here at an old grocery store called A&P. After that, I worked in a mailroom. I went to the University of Vermont and I worked in a mailroom. And do you know one thing that's common between a mailroom and a grocery store? Numbers. They all work with numbers, whether it's prices in a grocery store or fruit codes or zip codes at a mailroom. And I started realizing quickly by working with other people that I was really good at numbers. I liked playing games. I liked cards, dice, any sort of things that involved numbers, I was very interested in. And so, did I know where I was going at this point? No. I didn't even know there was a job called an economist until I was about 20 years old. So I had no clue what I was doing. And that's totally fine. Again, we're just trying to give you ideas. And if something you might think sounds good now, think about it, explore it, and maybe you change your mind later on. That's perfectly okay. But the one things I learned through my jobs, you show up on time, you work well with others, and you follow instructions. Those are 3 key skills that employers are always looking to fill. And those are skills you're learning right now in school, whether it's through a team, in your classrooms, or even maybe through a play or drama or band. You're learning to follow instructions, work well with others, and show up on time. So now we're going to play a quick game, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Kathi. So we're going to use our brochures. Everyone wave our brochures. Here we go. I want to see you across it, Brooke. We're going to choose option A or option B. So here's how the brochure works. It's like choose your own adventure. These are the yellow and the purple choices. So it says, oh, would you rather work with people and use your creativity to chit chat with all those people? Or do you want to work with your hands and build something? Let's see some hands. Who wants to work with people? Who wants, yeah, anybody? Oh, there's a couple. How about anyone want to build things, work with your hands? Yeah, I see a hand go right up there in Allison's class. So this could be either a real estate broker or a carpenter. Would you rather sell a house or build a house? Who wants to sell a house? Raise your hand. Barnett, who wants to build a house? I'm looking at you. There we go. There's a builder. We need that. All right. Another options we can choose. Teacher or plumber. These are sent from the different categories, different options within the same category. Any future teachers? Anyone? Walden School, any teachers in that room? Anyone interested? Nope. How about plumber? Would you rather be a plumber? Vermont needs those. Okay, there's some. I see some there at the tech school right there. I see you. All right, the next 2 categories. Would you rather learn, analyze, and solve problems or organize detailed information? Ooh, tough choices. This comes down to maybe a nurse or a police officer. Who wants to be a nurse? Any nurses possibly willing to take that choice? I see one at Walden. How about police officers? Anyone interested in that? Ooh, Barnett's got a police officer right there, possibly. Start thinking about that, explore that. That's a great option. How about an architect or an accountant? 2 occupations that begin with A. Who wants to design houses? Architect. Ooh, I see a couple of hands going up. Lastly, accountant. Anyone want to be an accountant instead? Any number people like me? No, not too many? Well, we're important. We need number people as well. So there's a lot of options, whether building houses, selling houses, designing houses, teaching, working with people. ways to use your creativity, lots of opportunities. So I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for being curious and asking questions. I'm turning it back over to Kathi so you can meet some real Vermonters doing this work in all around you. Thanks, Kathi.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. You always make economics fun, at least for me. So thank you for sharing your story and walking us through Vermont's most promising jobs and students. It was great. I was watching your hands going up to see what things you might be interested in over one thing over another. I want to take a moment to let you know that you can already tell we want to be interactive with you, and you are welcomed to write questions into the chat. So if anyone in your classroom has a question, ask a teacher or someone in the room to go ahead and type that right into the Zoom chat. Matt is amazing at answering people's questions about economics and job data. And so if you have a specific question about anything you're hearing about today or something you're just thinking about or interested in with your future and jobs and training, pop that into the chat and we will work on answering questions real time in the chat. And any questions we can't answer right now today, we will follow up and send the answers to your schools after. So go ahead and use that chat, flood it with questions, anything you have. If there's a lot of people asking the same question, we might even bring it up live and try to answer it for you here. So this session's also being recorded, and some classrooms who couldn't be here today are going to be watching this later. So we'll try to share some things that we're seeing come up in the chat out loud too. So, and that goes for the panelists who you're about to meet. If you have specific questions for any of the panelists, add those to the chat, and we'll either try to answer them now or we'll send you the answers to those questions after. Okay, so we are going to meet our panelists. I'm so excited to introduce to you one person who represents an occupation in each of these 4 categories that Matt just described to you. So up first, I would love to introduce you to Anthony, and we are going to be asking each panelist to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, tell us what your middle school career aspiration was, and then what your journey is to the job that you have now. How did you get this job and what do you do? So if each panelist will take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, we'll start with Anthony.
Good morning, folks. My name is Anthony Bambara. I own a MMA gym right in Winooski, Vermont called Combat Fitness. When I was in middle school, I wanted to be an entomologist, which is somebody who studies insects. You know, I really liked nature. And in middle school, I also started boxing, which ended up being my favorite hobby as well. When I went to college, right in state here at Johnson State College, I originally went to be a bio major, still think about entomology. But about halfway through, I realized that all my friends that I was hanging out with were exercise science majors, and I decided to switch and pursue a career being a boxing coach and being a small business owner. Just like Matt, I had to work a lot of odd jobs. I was a truck driver. I worked landscaping. I worked security. I worked construction, all on the path to me eventually buying and owning a gym in your local community. And I love it so much. I get to be here with my wife all day long. And we even run a little YouTube channel on the side to teach people from all over the world some educational boxing stuff.
Thanks so much, Anthony. All right, David, could you share a little bit about your career journey with us?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. My name is David Saladino, and represent civil engineer, which you may be able to see here. Looking back on kind of as I was growing up, I was very loved playing with Legos, loved building forts, loved building things, loved playing in streams and seeing if I could build dams. Loved the kind of creative part, and as Matt was talking about, you know, the builder piece that had always spoke to me. As I got a little bit older into middle school, started doing a lot of traveling and seeing some big things, you know, big interchanges, big airports, big buildings, and just wanted to be a part of that. And would pass construction sites and just would drive slowly so they could watch the construction come together. Something about it just really fascinated me. I had an opportunity in my in high school. I needed to get a job, needed to make some money, and I had an opportunity had two opportunities. One, I could be a day labor on a construction site, or the other one was to go sit in a car and count traffic, count cars at an intersection, something I never thought was people actually did that. And so that one intrigued me. So I went ahead and did it and counted cars. And lo and behold, I loved the idea of being an engineer. And fast forward to now, went into college as a civil engineer, found traffic engineering, transportation engineering as a calling that really spoke to me. It's engineering, but it's also a little bit softer. You get to think about, traffic lights and how to make communities better. And so that really spoke to me. And now I am a transportation engineer here, also in Winooski. And looking forward to more conversations.
Great. Thank you so much, David. All right, Ashlee, we'd love to hear a little bit about you.
Hey, good morning. I'm Ashlee Flanagan. I am a veterinarian. I actually work with both small animals and also aquatic animals. And the way that I got into this is I knew from a young age that I always wanted to work with animals. I grew up with a lot of dogs and cats, rabbits, you name it, we had it. A lot of animals to take care of. And then I went to school in Boston, got my veterinary science degree, a bachelor's in veterinary nursing, and then decided when I was working as a veterinary nurse for a couple years that I really wanted to learn more and be able to do more like the vets that were around me. And so I applied to veterinary school and went to school in Minnesota. And then I took a job down in Florida. So I actually live in Florida, which is where I work with the aquatic animals that I work with. But I knew from a young age that I wanted to do this.
Great. Thank you, Ashlee. All right. Now we're on to Scott. Tell us about yourself.
Hello, my name is Scott Pellegrini. I graduated high school from Mount Abraham Union High School in Bristol, so born and raised Vermonter. In middle school, my parents were educators. I think I thought I wanted to be a teacher for a while. I was always really into politics. I thought I might be a politician. Not dissimilar to Anthony there. I was really in athletics. I think coaching was always in my purview if I did make the NBA, of course, which I did not. Spoiler. But yeah, then I went to college in Virginia, economics and math minor. So actually, Matt at the Vermont Department of Labor. I will sign up for anything you have to say. I love what you do. A passionate economist as a hobbyist. I've had a career journey where I really still, I know I look like I'm 17, but I'm 45. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, I would say, candidly. It's about 23 years into my career post-college, always did really well in school. I've been in financial services, tech, hospitality, renewable energy, all over the place. A common through line throughout that is waiting tables at a lot of Vermont's best restaurants and other places too. But I've always come back to Vermont. And I find that whether it's part-time or full-time, I just really love it. You're on your feet. You're delighting customers, trying to deliver incredible guest experiences. And you get to work with a really interesting cross-section of people from all walks of life. So as a waiter, they've got us on one of those pages in your booklet, but I have worked with folks that represent all of those pages. Frankly, any night I go to the restaurant and work with my coworkers as a server in a restaurant, there are folks pretty well from all walks of life at that same job in the front of the house, as we call it. So excited to be here with you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Scott. And you raised a great point that will bring us into our next question. Before I move on to the next question, though, I wanted to point out to students, as each panelist is talking, you might notice that they have a color stripe on the side of their background. So Anthony represents this first category. Yes, there you are. And then the second category right here is David. So you'll see like that kind of purple category. And then the third, the orange category, is where Ashlee is. And then the fourth category is where Scott is. But like he said, there can be some overlap. And I want to highlight something you just said, Scott. I have lost count of how many adults have told me, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. It like sounds like a cute thing, but I think it's real. I think a lot of people do make changes and aspire to do different things over their whole career. And a little fun fact for you students, that on average, adults change jobs 12 times. So what you're interested in now, you may or you may not end up doing that. And then what you end up doing after high school, after if you go on to post-secondary training or education, you still might make changes, and that's okay. So a lot of people you've heard from today, you've heard different things that they've done along the way. Okay, so if a lot of people do change jobs, one thing that's really important is to know what skills are applicable in almost any job. So I'm going to tell you about the 4 Cs. This is kind of a fun name for 4 sets of skills that are needed in almost any job. So no matter what career field it is, these 4 skill sets that start with the letter C are important to know. And they are creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, and communication. So those are the 4 Cs. And I asked each of the panelists if they would highlight one of those Cs, so one of those skill sets and how it applies to their job. So Anthony, can you tell us how communication applies in your job?
I sure can. So my dad's a physical therapist, and my mom is a hairstylist, and I don't get much, help from her, but that's okay. But I always thought going into a coaching career, I would have more in common with my dad, but I actually have a lot more in common with my mom. It's a people first business. You need to communicate with people. You got to get on the same page, not only for scheduling purposes and organizing big events and managing a team and travel and all that semantic stuff, but also just to convey abstract ideas. If you're trying to teach somebody a skill, then you have to meet them where they are, and you have to get not to touch on one of the other C's here, but you have to get creative with how you can communicate with that person to cue them in a way that they learn. You're learning how to imbue knowledge on that person. And every single person that comes through that door is different, and you're going to have different responsibilities with them. And if you can't communicate diversely and broadly while also being specific, then you're going to struggle.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Anthony. That was great. All right. So David, you're on for creativity. Tell us how you use creativity in your job.
Hey. Yeah, it may seem at its face that creativity and engineering may be kind of counter to each other, but in fact, one of the kind of hallmarks of engineering is problem solving. And so daily we've got presented with challenges. So if you're in one example thinking about a roadway, you only have so much space to work in, and you've got people who want a bike lane, and some people who want some trees, and some people who want a sidewalk, and people who want multiple traffic lanes. And you can only squeeze so much into that space. And so thinking about, how do you make that work? So that involves creativity. Often a lot of times as well, we're trying to think about ways to make a place more exciting, more vibrant, more inviting, and you want to spend some time there. And so sometimes that's not an engineering solution. So it does involve thinking about ways. If you put a park bench here, this might be a good spot because it's got a great view of the lake, or, kind of thinking a little bit outside the box. Obviously, you need to know the engineering principles to design that bench and design kind of where it goes. But the thought process that leads to what you want to design provides a lot of opportunities. So as an engineer, really get to use both sides of your brain a lot. Certainly need to know math and science, but the creativity is critically important.
Thank you. Great answer, David. All right. So Ashlee, I am giving you the trickiest of the 4 Cs, and I just want to define it quickly for students. Critical thinking. The way I'm going to define it for you today is that this is taking in information by reading, observing, learning, asking questions, doing research, listening, and you take that information and you use it to make decisions. So Ashlee, how do you use critical thinking in your job?
Well, you just perfectly described my job because everything that I do involves critical thinking. So my patients can't talk to me. They can't tell me what's wrong. So I have to use what I have learned in school, what I have read in a book, what I've heard from other people, colleagues, researchers, use that information and say, okay, this is what I'm seeing in this animal, and this is what I've read about, what could be going on. Looking at a lot of research and a lot of papers, peer-reviewed journal articles to see, this is a case of a stingray. I have a stingray that I'm going to examine this afternoon who is kind of flapping its wings in a weird way. And she's not resting like she should. And she's not eating like she should. So, looking into those things and saying, okay, somebody else has seen this in a different aquarium before, and this is how they treated it. Do we have those medications available? Can we catch this stingray? So kind of everything that I do, I have to think outside of the box and think about, what could this be? What could this mean? And how should we go about treating it? So everything that I do is basically critical thinking and then kind of extrapolating and applying that to my creatures in need.
Great. Thank you so much, Ashlee. That's a great example. Love hearing about a stingray when we're talking about careers. That's not something I come across very often in my work. Okay, Scott, collaboration. That's a C word for teamwork. Can you tell us about that in your occupation?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, hardly a night goes by where you don't have to collaborate with either your coworkers or the guests themselves. And that's kind of an interesting inflection point, I think, generally in the workplace I found. Matt was giving you the slides early on there, like an example of real estate versus carpenter, right? So the real estate agent spends a lot of time also dealing with the potential buyer and the client, whereas the carpenter spends more time with their coworkers and the supply chain, kind of what we say in the restaurant, behind the swinging door, the front of the house and the back of the house. So in the front of the house of a restaurant, the collaboration is not just with your coworkers getting the restaurant set up, making sure you understand the menu with the chefs, talking to the bartenders about what's new and exciting, but it's also collaborating with your guests and then going back to the makers, the kitchen, to make sure you deliver the experience they like. And in the case of food service, that includes things like allergies, food allergies, and dietary restrictions. So it's really pretty critical that you get those things right. And you have to collaborate the guest needs to then the folks who didn't hear that directly, in the kitchen, to make sure they get the experience they like. So it takes a lot of working together with your coworkers, but also I think it's just an interesting time to point out, there's a lot of careers where that collaboration also extends to the guest or the client, and that sort of can inform some people's career journey. I think a lot of folks really enjoy that aspect of work, and other folks would rather be behind the scenes and not dealing with that that guest facing role, if you will, which a lot of jobs have, I think.
That's a really good point. It's nice to recognize that there's different ways you can use some of these skills, and some people might be interested more in one way or another. So I like that you brought that up. Students, I have a question for you. So thinking about the four C's, creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, and communication, do any of you raise your hand? Do you think you have some of all four of those skills? Raise your hand if you think. Okay. I'm seeing lots of hands go up. Really, all of your hands can go up because by the time you're in middle school, you are using communication every single day in the classroom. You're communicating with your teachers, with your classmates. You're writing, you're speaking, you're listening. So communication every day, you are practicing that. Creativity, I'm pretty sure that you have to do some creative problem solving, probably in math class. You might be artistic or taking an art class and using creativity that way, like in a visual arts way, maybe performing arts and drama or music. Collaboration, I'm pretty sure you've had to work with other students in your class, maybe on a group project, maybe you play a team sport. And then critical thinking, you're doing that every single day, even though you might not be thinking, I am using critical thinking right now. You are taking in information and making decisions with it every day. So be thinking about that. You all are practicing the four C's and getting better and better at them every day. And those will help you throughout your whole future. Okay, we are going to move on to the next question. Tell us a little bit, panelists, about your education and training. We actually had one school that sent us a question in advance, like, how did you get into this job? What does it take to get into your job? So tell us about what you did. What were the building blocks to get into the job that you have today? You can mention any education, training, experience, anything like that. And bonus points if you can think of anything in middle school that helps you in your job today. So let's go back and start with Anthony.
So, education, official training, and things that I've done. The first and foremost thing, if you're gonna pursue a passion of yours, you need to be walking the walk. You need to enjoy, you need to live the thing that you're doing, And I'm very lucky that I am coaching boxing. I started boxing when I was in 6th grade, so I've been doing this for 24 years now. Been doing this for a long time. They talk a lot about getting your 10,000 hours in to become an expert. I've done that twice. I allot a couple hours every day to focus on this thing. And if my body isn't up to it, then I study it. And that's really important. Other things that have helped me with this, I had to go to college. I had to get a degree in exercise science. So I knew how to help my athletes when they would run into pitfalls, things that they struggle with physically. Goodness gracious. I'm trying to think of connections that I can make back to middle school. And the biggest ones I really think are a lot of the geometry stuff. I read this wonderful book when I was in high school called Fight Like a Physicist. And it talks a lot about how you can use your understanding of physics or of geometry to break down basic positions, functional movements in your body, how to move around a space and move around a ring. It's easy to look at athletes and think that they're just showing up and letting their body do the work. But every single thing, every single athlete that succeeds at a high level succeeds because they're smart. And they've trained smart and they've thought smart. And it's a skill sport first. And that's an important thing to learn. And then running a business, I use everything that I've ever learned in every class that I've ever taken. Goodness gracious. Trying to manage a whole team and trying to manage finances and trying to manage a space and trying to corral people for events. I'm very blessed that I was in the Essex school system, that I was in a good school system where I learned a lot of those things that could allow me to succeed.
Wow. Thank you, Anthony. That was fantastic to hear about all of that. David, can you tell us about your education and training and experience?
Yeah, I think just to pick up on a thread, a couple of commenters had made about about what it's like to be kind of on the front lines and managing people. And, a lot of, unless you go into some, you end up going to college, you go into some kind of management degree, you probably won't take classes on how to work, well with people. But that is a critical skill set. And, as you're just having team time or as you're getting groups together, if you're the kind of person who gravitates towards leading that team, or think about how your role within that group, and those skills, they may not seem like skills because you're getting together to talk about some book you've read or some science experiment, but actually that group dynamic is something really important to be thinking about, because as we, particularly in the engineering space, we're always working together with teams, and we have different people take on different roles within those teams, and we need somebody to be a leader. We need people who can listen and take instructions and then be able to do those pieces. We'll also say, as engineering gets more and more advanced, we're doing a lot of three-dimensional design, and so anything that you can do, kind of thinking about that, to be able to imagine 3 dimensions. And my son is a big Minecraft fan. And so that kind of thing where you're building things in 3 dimensions and you're zooming around and looking at it, you're really building that muscle in your brain to be able to think in 3 dimensions. And that is a really critical skill set as you get into engineering and design of bridges or buildings or those kinds of things.
Wow, great. And excellent Minecraft example. Just thinking about what kinds of things you do when you're in school as students right now that can apply to these jobs. That's fantastic. Ashlee, how about your education, training, and experience?
So like I said, I knew that I wanted to work with animals. I wasn't sure exactly how to do that, or in what capacity I wanted to do this. But throughout school, I did pretty well, and studied hard, a lot of math and science. I went to get a bachelor's degree, and my bachelor's of science, again, was in veterinary nursing. So I knew that I wanted to be in this field, but I thought that I was going to be a veterinary nurse, and that's what I wanted to do. But then eventually I just realized that I wanted to go further and continue my education because I wasn't done learning yet. And so that's when I went to veterinary school, which is another 4 years on top of your bachelor's, which is, the first 4 years, and then veterinary school is an additional 4 years. And then after that, you can also do an internship and residency, which is an additional 4 years. So I didn't end up doing an internship and a residency because I got out of school with my doctor of veterinary medicine and decided that I wanted to start working, and I wanted to settle down somewhere and things like that. So I was kind of done with the school process, but you never stop learning, even as a requirement from different states, like you have to do continuing education, a certain amount of hours every year, but you can, there's opportunities for travel and learning different parts of this field. And so I'm in a very unique subset of taking care of aquatic animals, but it's all, who and how well you communicate with others and work with other people, and you just never stop learning.
Great. Thank you so much, Ashlee. Okay, we're going to move on to Scott for your education, training, and experience.
Yeah, I would say definitely did not know I would start being waitstaff coming out of college. I kind of fell into it. It was really a pathway to try and get out of my parents' house as quickly as possible. I was also working in a school at the time, but I wanted to make some more money. And I would say, as far as the waitstaff side of the equation, there isn't a lot of education going in. I would say it's a very low barrier to entry kind of job opportunity. Various restaurants, the whole spectrum. I tend to work at fine dining, some of the more established places. And believe it or not, there's a lot of continuing education when you do work at those places. We're constantly studying the beverage list and the food side. Food menu is always changing. So that might be a surprise to some folks, but if you really enjoy it, it's actually a lot of fun. On the chef side, there I think are some opportunities to engage a little more early on. There's so a lot of the career training technical centers. I believe Essex has one. Middlebury, I believe, St. Johnsbury, maybe some other North Country, I believe, has one. That's sort of a culinary track if you're interested in the chef side. There's things like Junior Iron Chef, which is a really cool competition that you might be able to access if you have any interest in cooking or just help supporting the chef team that is competing. And then as you get a little older, I actually teach a course for UVM to start a new hospitality certificate program online. So if you're really interested in like a hospitality career, so not necessarily as wait staff, I would say the easiest way to educate yourself in wait staff, right as you go into high school, you want to make some money. Restaurants need you, whether it's washing dishes and getting a feel for the kitchen environment, or back serving, hosting, kind of learning as you do it. And a lot of the restaurants do not require as much continuing education as you go. That's something you might work up to in time.
Yes, good point. And looking at this green page here, wait staff, 7,200 projected openings in Vermont. So Scott is correct on that point for sure. I am seeing fabulous questions coming into the chat and really good answers. So the chat is on fire right now, and I'm going to give a little shout out to Matt. Thank you for answering so many of these questions with really good data. So just a reminder, we will compile the questions and answers in the chat and we'll get them out to all schools, and any schools that registered to watch this recording later in the classroom, we'll get those out to you too. If there's another classroom watching this and maybe didn't pre-register, you can definitely reach out to us and we can get those to you as well. But Matt, before we move on to the next question, would you be able to share one of your responses I'm seeing here so that everyone in the recording can hear it too? The one where you started with a little background. I think it's a good point that we can share with all the students listening now and anyone watching in the recording just about the 600 occupations.
Yeah, of course, Kathi. Thank you to Rebecca for flagging that. There are over 600 different types of jobs in the Vermont economy, and this brochure only highlights 60 of them. So less than 1 out of 10. So you might not see something that you're really interested in here, maybe because it's small or developing or emerging, or it's something that's coming out, or it might not meet the wage threshold that we've highlighted here. So to be in this brochure, you have to have at least $30 an hour in median wage, and then projected openings of over 300. So those tend to be bigger occupations. And so some of the occupations you might be interested in, like maybe you want to be a brain surgeon, That's not going to be in here because it's a very small occupation. We're not trying to discourage you towards going towards that. It's a very important occupation, but it requires a lot of education and background, or a lot of, it's a good skill. So anyway, so we're just trying to let you know that there's a lot of opportunities out there. Keep asking questions, keep doing research and talking to people. The questions you're asking right now are questions you can ask your neighbors, your parents' friends, or guardians' friends. And you can learn so much by how people answer those questions about what their favorite job was or what their least favorite job was. So keep being curious.
Yeah, and just to share some of the occupations students are interested in coming up in the chat, we have coder, video game designer, wood carver, actor. So lots of things are coming into the chat that may or may not be in this resource you're holding in your hands, but Matt has been sharing some links of where you can go find the same data on those occupations pretty easily right at the Department of Labor's website. Okay, so back to another question for panelists. A lot of times I meet a lot of students throughout the year. I'm very fortunate that I get to travel around the state and visit schools and different career events, and I get to meet students. And one thing I hear a lot is students asking, like, I really want to make a difference. Like, what kind of profession or job could I have that makes a difference? So I would like to ask each of the panelists how I believe that every single job makes a difference, but sometimes people might not really think about that or talk about that as much. So I want to ask each of the panelists if you can tell us how your job makes a difference. It could be for people, for animals, for society. It could be in your workplace, your community, our state. It could be the whole world. How does your job make a difference? So if you could share that with us, we'll start with Anthony.
So I'm going to approach this from two different angles. I'm going to say individually, obviously, martial arts are going to improve the quality of anybody's life who's able to participate in them. It's going to keep you fit. It's going to keep you healthy. It's going to give you a sense of community. It's going to give you a form of therapy, certainly. If you can bundle all those things together, into one group, you're saving yourself a lot of time, which is great. So I think that teaching that is good for a community. I always say, it meets young, aggressive people where they are, and it helps to give them an outlet for that. That's one way that I'm making a difference. The other way, more broadly, I talk about, we joke a lot at the gym. We talk about the combat fitness economy, where, we're all helping each other. We have people from all walks of life that use the small business as a hub. And, older folks are helping younger folks get jobs, helping them with their resumes and their cover letters, selling cars back and forth, moving things around, steering people to other businesses, local restaurant owners or barbers or things like that. The economy is really local, and the rising tide raises all ships. And I feel very happy to be at the hub of that and helping to hook people up with each other so that they can all support each other.
Oh, thank you so much, Anthony. How about you, David? Can you share how your job makes a difference?
Absolutely. As a civil engineer, and I guess just a quick note on, there's several different engineering paths that you can take. Civil engineers typically focus on things that you can see and touch. They're kind of bigger, public infrastructure, buildings, bridges, and so forth. And so thinking about how to improve the world, it's a fairly, that is really what energizes me on any given day. So anyone who's driven through Winooski Main Street or Burlington Main Street in the last year, you'll see two big construction projects that people probably aren't super happy about, but once the dust finally settles, these are going to be really beautiful streets. And that, to me, being able to drive down those streets to see the construction after the design is done, places that are welcoming to people, places that flow well, where you're not stuck behind in a red traffic light all day. Those kinds of things are helpful to the community, but also are really what drive me, that get me up in the morning, get me to go to work, to find different ways to improve kind of the livability of our communities and everything around us.
Thanks so much, David. Ashlee, how about you?
So I think, for me, the biggest thing that I want to do is connect with kids and teach them about the environment, teach them about animals, and by connecting with kids, giving them sort of firsthand experiences at an aquarium where they can see penguins, maybe for the first time, learn more about their habitat, learn about fish and shrimp and kind of how everything fits together. I think you can inspire kids and adults, but to protect their environment, to care about their environment, teach them about conservation through firsthand experience and getting up close and personal with animals. And I think David Attenborough, the famous researcher, has said, no one will protect what they can't see. And so you have to make people care about, their surroundings. And I do that by, taking care of these animals so that people can come here and experience them, have firsthand experience, and then go out and want to protect, the environment and conserve and recycle and, things like that. So I think each little animal here can kind of inspire somebody to do better out in the, out in the real world.
Thank you so much, Ashlee. I love that Attenborough quote. That's a nice one to think about. Okay, Scott, how about you?
Yeah, I think one of the things I love about waiting tables is it's sort of a short interaction period. So it's a really easy opportunity to delight a guest for what might be a really special occasion. I think one of the things that has become really apparent as I worked in fine dining for many years, a lot of folks are there celebrating an anniversary and birthday, and it might be the only time they really go out to such a meal all year, or maybe for several years. They have to get a babysitter. Maybe the kids were, you kids in the classroom, maybe you had a tough week or you were sick or whatever, and they got the babysitter and they found parking, and it's a kind of expensive. It might be, tough to go out. And so you really have the opportunity to sort of, a lot of times your guest is sort of traveling, even though they might have only gone a mile from their home. They've really traveled mentally, thousands of miles from a lot of the things that are stressing them out on a daily basis. And you have the opportunity to really give them an experience they talk about for a very long time. They remember for a very long time. And you really just get to make people feel good and bring joy and happiness and maybe forget things that might be bothering them. So I'd say that's the biggest impact we get to have. And then secondarily, I'd piggyback on Coach Bambara there. I think, in the restaurants in Vermont, you have the opportunity to work for a lot of really great small businesses. And Matt at the Vermont Department of Labor will tell you we just have this incredible, cornucopia of small businesses in Vermont, and it's something that makes Vermont really unique and special. And certainly, waiting on folks, a lot of them are, not just local guests, they're folks staying in hotels and tourists, if you will, and they might be asking what else they should do while they're here for a few days. And you're pointing out all these great shops and all these great tourist attractions and the hiking and the skiing and so forth. And that's something that's really special about Vermont. I think a lot of the small businesses really do try to support each other. A dollar spent at one small business goes to the employees that live here, and then anytime you're supporting a small business in the local community, it really kind of has these ripple effects throughout. So I think that's another piece that I'm proud of working at restaurants in Vermont, is just being a part of that ecosystem.
Wow, thank you, Scott. That was great. All right, we have a couple of minutes left. I'm going to throw in a bonus question based on what I'm seeing in the chat, but panelists, you only have about 1 minute to answer this one. So it's going to be a quick popcorn one, so we can wrap up on time for everybody. I'm seeing a paired question here in the chat. Could each of you just close with tell us what one hard thing is about your job and your favorite thing? It's good for students to know that every job has pluses and minuses. You all make it sound like a lot of really positive things about your job, and I know you're all great representatives for your occupation. But let us know, is there anything that's hard, and then your favorite thing? And we'll end on that note and wrap up after. Anthony.
I think the hardest thing about my job, about being a small business owner, is that you don't just get a clock out. at the end of the day. If you run the show, you're in charge no matter what. I've definitely had weeks where I've been closing in on 80 hours in the gym space, and a lot of times it's feast or famine. You'll work really hard when there's work to be done. And especially around the holidays coming up, I'm going to have a big downtime right now between Thanksgiving and New Year's until all the resolutioners show up, but it's worth it. I get to work for myself. I worked at 9 different gyms as just a trainer before I finally got to buy my own space. And at every single one of those gyms, I wished I could be nicer to people. I wish I could cut people a break instead of working at a Globo gym. And now that I'm my own boss, I get to be kind to people and I get to create the space that I want. If that costs me the occasional 70-hour week, it's worth it to me.
Perfect. Okay, David, how about you?
Yeah, I think in terms of probably one of the hardest pieces, and I kind of alluded to it in the chat, is, as engineers, we get hired by certain people, whether it's the state or a city or a developer who wants something designed. Sometimes they all want the same thing, they want their things all at the same time. And, I haven't been able to figure out how to clone myself. So, I think it's those kind of competing deadlines and try our best to kind of line things up so that doesn't happen. But inevitably, there are those real crunch times where, everyone rolls up their sleeves and has to work hard. So that's probably the hardest thing, is those convergence of deadlines. I alluded to probably the best part is, personally, it's driving around with my kids and saying, I worked on that project. That's a project that we worked on. That brings me joy and makes me love what I do.
Great. Thank you. Ashlee. Oh, make sure you unmute. No problem.
I would say the hardest part of my job is just when a case doesn't go well. So when you have a sick animal and you try, you do your research and you try to fix them and it doesn't go your way, or they pass away. And that happens, and you just have to be prepared for that and know that you're doing the best that you can with the information that you have. Because if a dog could come to me and say, oh, this is what I did to my paw, or, my chest hurts or something like that, that would make my job a lot easier. But just trying to figure out what's going on and make the best decision you can with the information that you have, and try to, make everybody happy. But I would say that the cases that don't go the way you want them to, that's the hardest part.
Thanks, Ashlee. Scott.
Yeah, I'd say the hardest part is in waiting tables is that you always really do need to put the guest first. You're always trying to deliver an incredible guest experience, and there are days where you're just not feeling it. It's not the place you want to be, and there's not really any place to hide. One of the nice things about the job is it is flexible. You might be able to get cut on those nights, but if you're there to serve the guest, it's the guest first, and you have to be able to sort of put your stress that you brought in aside to take care of their needs for the night. I would say that dovetails nicely with maybe my favorite thing is that, as I mentioned in my intro, I've worked in a lot of different sectors and careers over the last 20 plus years. I would say waiting tables uniquely, at least in my experience, I don't know if this is true for everyone, but I'm really able to leave it at work. I'm getting ready to open my own restaurant where that will no longer be the case, as Coach alluded to there. It'd probably be a very different scenario. But as an employee, as a waitstaff employee, it's always been really nice to sort of like do a great job at work and then punch the clock and be out, and maybe hang out with your coworkers as well, which is always a fun environment. But some of my other jobs, it's hard to put the email down, put the phone down. There are notifications or work emergency will, maybe stresses that took me overnight. And I've had much less of that waiting tables. It's something I've just been able to like do a great job there and then immediately sort of like turn it off and move on. So I'd say that's the thing I appreciate the most about it.
Thanks so much, Scott. All right, we are going to finish on time, but before we end, I want to just send out a few thank yous. First and foremost, students and teachers for joining us this morning. We loved having you here. It was fun seeing you all on screen, and students watching the recording later. We're so glad you're doing that. A big shout out to Anna and her team at VSAC for hosting and organizing this whole event. It's weeks and weeks of work to make this happen. And then also Matt from the Department of Labor, thank you for making economics fun for us and sharing so much information. And of course, our panelists. We appreciate all that you just shared. It's all such valuable information for students to hear directly from you. You made all of these numbers in this brochure come to life. And a thank you to the McClure Foundation for making this available at no cost to all of the schools participating today and giving us a fun way to learn about labor market information. So thank you, all of you. We will definitely get a compilation of the questions and answers out to you later, and keep sending us your questions if you have more. Anna?
I'll just echo everything Kathi said. Thank you so much, all. Thank you, Kathi, for always spearheading this and making it so fun and engaging. We will be following up with you all with some more resources, and feel free to, if you have any questions that you wish you had said or you think of afterwards, feel free to email them to me and I can include them in the ones that we work on getting answers to you following the event. So thanks for being here.